Hi, welcome to my channel. Would you believe that there are countries that are still fighting and killing each other in this 21st century? If no, then in today's video we're going to know countries that are currently at the war. So kindly subscribe to the channel, like and share the video, for more exciting content like this. Before we proceed, I've a question for you. Would you like to be king in a poorest country or poor in the richest country? Let me know in comment section. So starting with, the Anguilla Crisis of 1969 involved Anguilla's separation from St. Kitts and Nevis, a federation Anguilla had been part of since 1967. Anguilla sought independence from the federation, leading to a referendum where a large majority voted in favor of separation. The British government then sent troops to restore order, but encountered little resistance and the situation was ultimately resolved through negotiation, not military force. France's involvement in the Central African Republic, CAR, from 1979 to 2015 was characterized by several military interventions, primarily aimed at restoring stability and supporting specific political figures. This period saw France orchestrate coups, deploy peacekeeping missions, and engage in long-term military presence in the country. And also, the Second Sudanese Civil War was a conflict from 1983 to 2005 between the Central Sudanese government and the Sudan People's Liberation Army. It was largely a continuation of the First Sudanese Civil War of 1955 to 1972. Although it originated in southern Sudan, the civil war spread to the Nuba Mountains and the Blue Nile. It lasted for almost 22 years and is one of the longest civil wars on record. The war resulted in the independence of South Sudan 6 years after the war ended. And again, Operation Epervier, meaning Sparrowhawk in English, was the French military operation in Chad from 1986 to 2014. Its primary goals were to combat Libyan expansionism, contribute to the restoration of peace and maintain the territorial integrity of Chad, and, later, to support stability in Chad and the sub-region. The operation was replaced by Operation Barkhane in August 2014, which absorbed Epervier and another operation in Mali, according to African arguments.
So, the Sierra Leonean Civil War, 1991 to 2002, was a civil war in Sierra Leone that began on the 23rd of March 1991 when the Revolutionary United Front, RUF, with support from the Special Forces of Liberian dictator Charles Taylor's National Patriotic Front of Liberia, NPFL, intervened in Sierra Leone in an attempt to overthrow the Joseph Momo government. The resulting civil war lasted almost 11 years, and had over 50,000, up to 70,000, casualties in total. An estimated 2.5 million people were displaced during the conflict, and widespread atrocities occurred. Again, Bosnian War, April 6, 1992 to December 14, 1995. The Bosnian War was an international armed conflict that took place in Bosnia and Herzegovina between 1992 and 1995. The war is commonly seen as having started on the 6th of April 1992, following several earlier violent incidents. It ended on the 14th of December 1995 when the Dayton Accords were signed. More, Second Chechen War, 1999 to 2009. The Second Chechen War began in the summer of 1999. According to the official Russian narrative, it was triggered by the invasion of Chechen units into neighboring Dagestan in early August. However, Russian troops had already entered the Chechen Republic with force and had occupied part of its territory. And, 2000 to 2005, Second Intifada, Al-Aqsa Intifada. The Second Intifada, also known as the Al-Aqsa Intifada, was a period of intense conflict and Palestinian uprising against Israeli rule that began in late September 2000 and continued for several years. The Intifada was characterized by widespread protests, demonstrations, suicide bombings, and armed confrontations between Israeli security forces and Palestinian terrorists. Then also, War in Afghanistan, 2001-2014. The war in Afghanistan, from 2001 to 2014, was a period of conflict that began with the US-led invasion of Afghanistan in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The initial goal was to dismantle al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban regime, which was sheltering the terrorist group. The war involved a multinational coalition, including Canada and NATO, with a focus on training and advising the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, ANZF. The war concluded in 2014 with the official end of combat operations, and the gradual handover of security responsibilities to the Afghan forces. Global War on Terrorism, 2001 to 2013, a.e., the Global War on Terrorism, GWOT, primarily a US-led effort, was a broad and multifaceted response to the September 11 attacks. It involved military interventions in Afghanistan, 2001, and Iraq, 2003, alongside intelligence gathering, law enforcement actions, and diplomatic efforts aimed at dismantling al-Qaeda and other terrorist networks. This period was marked by the implementation of measures like the USA Patriot Act and a significant increase in US military spending and global deployment, according to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. The GWOT, which lasted for 2 decades, ultimately ended with the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan in 2021. And Iraq War and Insurgency, 2003 to 2011. The first Iraqi insurgency, also known as the Ba'athist insurgency in Iraq, lasted from 2003 until 2011, beginning shortly after the 2003 American invasion deposed longtime leader Saddam Hussein, and lasting until the end of the Iraq War and US withdrawal in 2011. It was followed by a renewed insurgency. Again, the 2006 Lebanon War. The 2006 Lebanon War was a 34-day armed conflict in Lebanon, fought between Hezbollah and Israel. The war started on the 12th of July 2006, and continued until a United Nations brokered ceasefire went into effect in the morning on the 14th of August 2006, though it formally ended on the 8th of September 2006 when Israel lifted its naval blockade of Lebanon. It marked the third Israeli invasion into Lebanon since 1978. And Operation Cast Lead, 2008-2009, the Gaza War, also known as the First Gaza War, Operation Cast Lead or the Gaza Massacre and referred to as the Battle of Al-Furqan by Hamas, was a 3-week armed conflict between Gaza Strip Palestinian paramilitary groups and the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, that began on the 27th of December 2008 and ended on the 18th of January 2009 with a unilateral ceasefire. The conflict resulted in 1,166 to 1,417 Palestinian and 13 Israeli deaths. Over 46,000 homes were destroyed in Gaza, making more than 100,000 people homeless. And the Boko Haram insurgency began in July 2009, when the militant Islamist and jihadist rebel group Boko Haram started an armed rebellion against the government of Nigeria. The conflict is taking place within the context of long-standing issues of religious violence between Nigeria's Muslim and Christian communities, and the insurgents' ultimate aim is to establish an Islamic State in the region. Then also, Syrian civil war, 2011-present. In March 2011 Syria's government, led by Bashar al-Assad, faced an unprecedented challenge to its authority when pro-democracy protests erupted throughout the country. Protesters demanded an end to the authoritarian practices of the Assad regime, in place since Assad's father, Hafez al-Assad, became president in 1971. The Syrian government used violence to suppress demonstrations, making extensive use of police, military, and paramilitary forces. Opposition militias began to form in 2011, and by 2012 the conflict had expanded into a full-fledged civil war. In late November 2024, as the government's support from military allies collapsed, it was unable to stave off a rapid offensive by opposition forces, and in early December Assad fled the country. The civil war continued after Assad's fall as a new government took shape and worked to assert control over all of Syria. And more. Libyan crisis, 2011-present. The Libyan crisis is the current humanitarian crisis and political military instability occurring in Libya, beginning with the Arab Spring protests of 2011, which led to 2 civil wars, foreign military intervention, and the ousting and death of Muammar Gaddafi. The first civil war's aftermath and proliferation of armed groups led to violence and instability across the country, which erupted into renewed civil war in 2014. The second war lasted until October 23, 2020, when all parties agreed to a permanent ceasefire and negotiations. Again, Operation Pillar of Defense, 2012. In November 2012, the Israel Defense Forces launched Operation Pillar of Defense, which was an 8-day campaign in the Hamas-governed Gaza Strip, beginning on the 14th of November 2012 with the killing of Ahmed Jabari, chief of the Gaza military wing of Hamas, by an Israeli airstrike. And more. War in Donbas, 2014-present. The war in Donbas, c. or the Donbas War, was a phase of the Russo-Ukrainian War in the eastern Donbas region of Ukraine. The war began in April 2014, when Russian paramilitaries seized several towns. Ukraine's military launched an operation against them, but failed to fully retake the territory. Covertly, Russia's military were directly involved, and the separatists were largely under Russian control. The war continued until subsumed by the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Then again, War in Donbas, 2014-present. The war in Donbas, or the Donbas War, was a phase of the Russo-Ukrainian War in the eastern Donbas region of Ukraine. The war began in April 2014, when Russian paramilitaries seized several towns. Ukraine's military launched an operation against them, but failed to fully retake the territory. Covertly, Russia's military were directly involved, and the separatists were largely under Russian control. The war continued until subsumed by the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Also, Russian annexation of Crimea, 2014. In February and March 2014, Russia invaded the Crimean Peninsula, part of Ukraine, and then annexed it. This took place in the relative power vacuum immediately following the Revolution of Dignity. It marked the beginning of the Russo-Ukrainian War. Then again, Gaza War, 2014. The 2014 Gaza War, also known as Operation Protective Edge, and Battle of the Withered Grain, was a military operation launched by Israel on the 8th of July 2014 in the Gaza Strip, a Palestinian territory that has been governed by Hamas since 2007. And more. Yemeni Civil War, 2015-present. The Yemeni Civil War is an ongoing, multilateral civil war that began in late 2014 mainly between the Rashad al-Alimi-led Presidential Leadership Council and the Mahdi al-Mashit-led Supreme Political Council, along with their supporters and allies. Both claim to constitute the official government of Yemen. And again, 2016 Turkish coup d'état attempt, 2016, in the evening of the 15th of July 2016, a faction within the Turkish armed forces, organized as the Peace at Home Council, attempted a coup d'état against state institutions, including the government and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. They attempted to seize control of several places in Ankara, Istanbul, Marmaris and elsewhere, such as the Asian side entrance of the Bosphorus Bridge, but failed to do so after forces and civilians loyal to the state defeated them. The council cited an erosion of secularism, elimination of democratic rule, disregard for human rights, and Turkey's loss of credibility in the international arena as reasons for the coup. The government said it had evidence the coup leaders were linked to the Gulen movement, which is designated as a terrorist organization by the Republic of Turkey and led by Fethullah Gulen, a Turkish businessman and a well-known Islamic scholar, who lived in exile in Pennsylvania. The Turkish government alleged that Gulen was behind the coup, which Gulen denied, and that the United States was harboring him. Events surrounding the coup attempt and the purges in its aftermath reflect a complex power struggle between Islamist elites in Turkey. And the Great Israel-Palestine Crisis, 2021. The 2021 Israel-Palestine crisis, sometimes called the Unity Intifada, was a major outbreak of violence in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that mainly commenced on the 10th of May 2021, and continued until a ceasefire came into effect on the 21st of May. It was marked by protests and police riot control, rocket attacks on Israel by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, and Israeli airstrikes in the Gaza Strip. The crisis was triggered on the 6th of May, when Palestinians in East Jerusalem began protesting over an anticipated decision of the Supreme Court of Israel on the eviction of 6 Palestinian families in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. Under international law, the area, effectively annexed by Israel in 1980, is a part of the Israeli-occupied West Bank. On the 7th of May, according to Israel's Channel 12, Palestinians threw stones at Israeli police forces, who then stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound using tear gas, rubber bullets, and stun grenades. The crisis prompted protests around the world as well as official reactions from world leaders. And also, the almighty Russian invasion of Ukraine, 2022. On the 24th of February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, starting the largest and deadliest war in Europe since World War II, in a major escalation of the conflict between the two countries which began in 2014. The fighting has caused hundreds of thousands of military casualties and tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilian casualties. As of 2025, Russian troops occupy about 20% of Ukraine. From a population of 41 million, about 8 million Ukrainians have been internally displaced and more than 8.2 million had fled the country by April 2023, creating Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like and share for more exciting content like this. Peace.